his imagination widely and spent most of his time in painting something that is really worth visiting. In his distinguished art, he portrayed folk myth and integrated old civilization. Thank you very much, Mr. Abud Salman, for accepting our invitation.
خصوصيتي كرسام وتجربتي المستمرة بعالم الرسم بدأ من مراحل الطفولة التي عشتها بشكل جيد على وادي نهر الفرات.
As a painter, I began since childhood when I lived in the Euphrates Valley in the Syrian land, which impressed me with its mountains, rivers, and nature. This historical piece of land inspired me because I was in contact with the nature through my work as a shepherd, for I belonged to a peasant family. This lifestyle gave me the incentive to a continuous dialogue with the rivers, nature, and sun, in addition to a dialogue with women. The first dialogue with women was with my mother, who impressed me by her scarf and gown. Then another woman appeared in my paintings who impressed me a lot. She was my sister, Zara. I also was impressed by my grandmother. So, I've tried to reflect what impressed me in my artworks and writings in addition to embroideries. The birds of the Euphrates impressed me as well on account of my living there. There is a huge castle called Rabbah, which is a historical castle linking the east with the west, recording the history of every person who went into it throughout different ages. Consequently, my paintings also speak of the Euphrates civilizations. I lived a distressed but a beautiful childhood. Its distresses emerged from austerity and difficulty in daily life. From this sufferance, my paintings were born carrying the feature of the intimate life and a mix of reality and the universe. During childhood, I was writing on the city walls, considering them as my first papers, since those walls were in white and I was drawing with black charcoal. All the time, I drew about birds, life, love, sun, as well as I drew about my relationship with trees and roses. These points were the start for me to be a member of the art world. Then my talent developed and I became a professional in artworks. During this experience in my childhood, I drew many paintings and concluded many sayings of wisdom. My persistence case is human dialogue with earth. I portrayed the human who is showing benevolence, starting from the Euphrates human, from the small land to the whole world. This dialogue has guided me to a wider dialogue with the historical civilizations and the beautiful scenes. Plastic art is regarded as a title for all my artworks. This experience is going to continue as I continue and is going to breathe as I breathe, carrying the world grieves in this isolate region to express its pain and sufferance, as well as to express the features of the beauty of any woman in the world. In my paintings, colors always dance because I tend to the public style, using a variation from women's clothes to drawing a painting expressing Orient customs and traditions. I call these paintings windows for light because they enlighten other people.
The first Abud Salman has been many participations and private exhibitions established in Arab and international cities. He established the following exhibitions in the Arab cities: Meeting of the Well-Beloved Ones in Jeddah, a present with the scent of history in Riyadh, a twin as big as our dreams in Jeddah, visual spaces in Alexandria, a garret assembly in Latakia, and Arabian Seas in Khobar. While the following exhibitions were established in international cities: drawings of the Syrian desert in Paris and Euphrates and Time in Rome, in addition to another exhibitions speaking about his art and participations.
يعني نشاطاتي كانت تتجاوز أحيانا سلم المعرض التشكيلي.
My activities sometimes exceeded the plastic gallery to my relationships with painting, teachers, and dialogue with children, which created colors of joy in my works through the innocence of lines and disposition of the work, so the children were my good friends. From this perspective, in every school where I worked in, I always made a workshop of painting on walls, collecting the wasting things and forming it into a new shape. Thus, my relationship with children, who are my people and heroes, were much closer to me as it's always in my portrait. I have many active children along with my son Osama, who is so active in painting, in addition to my grandson who can paint well in spite of his scientific interest. I am so happy of being with those fantastic children who are my only consolation of the future. I am so glad about your opinion in the workshops, which have to be continued as Paolo Picasso, who attempted to be a child in his portraits. The child in the portrait is the true form of innocence and truth, which makes high impressions on the society. Therefore, I always endeavor to an open world that can achieve their sensitive ambitions. In 1987, I and some children worked on some old and new women's clothes. We shaped fantastic artistic works, which were presented in many occasions. I also did so in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia through my work as a teacher in Najd schools, whereas some students paint by caricature and others painted by the Arab script or by the materials. For that reason, we got an important production of domain visits to the plastic galleries and opening the dialogues with the artists, along with the great and numerous productions of portraits, even that were documented or not. Moreover, I published some of these works on the internet. Those children are our ambassadors to the world because it is so fantastic that the child can present his environment, his history, his philosophy, and his intellectual of the surrounding nature. So, I will always be so pleased of my relationship with the child who makes me full of joy and sends me back to my pretty childhood.
محيط فيه يعني. لهذا السبب أنا سعيد جدا في علاقتي مع الأطفال ودائما أحرص عليها لأنها تسكنني هاي الفرحة من الداخل يعني وتعيدني إلى طفولتي القديمة. جاءت تجربتي في الكتابة تجربة طبيعية.
My experience in writing was natural as it was basically never detached from drawing, and during my childhood I always painted mixture of scripts on walls in order to have artistic work. I was one of the first artists in my city who tried to combine between script and drawing. However, I wasn't professional in script world. In addition, I used to send my issues, criticisms, and opinions to the newspapers. Gradually, my trips and movements were increased, and I tried to improve my work, which added to my many visions that I expressed about my writings. In criticism, I never criticized to diminish the value of the work, but I did so to add further worlds to gourmet of the beauty, although with helping and improving the artistic work. As a result of the shortage in the number of readers and followers, I wrote for many Arab and international newspapers. I published my first book, Persons of Al-Hajjaj City, which included an artistic experience for the people of plastic artists. After I continued to publish the objective critical works such as Revealing Mirrors, Situations of Profession and Nature, and Positions in Plastic Art, in addition to 15 books of manuscripts that were intensified on the modern plastic art. These manuscripts focused on charming of Arab artists' work, which with local indications that able to act with other culture. Therefore, I did every possible effort to make these writings saved in order to reflect the Arab art and its success through my charm research. I was very hard in my critic manner of speaking without insulting criticism, but I was always enamored of any beautiful work and follower for the newest in plastic art for the Arab artists who were my obsession and still who are my heritage, and I tried to make them a renewable plastic cause. My last critical trial of Revealing Mirrors was so intimate because I talked about a historic and sacred city, Mecca, the place where I lived during my residence in KSA, the place with all loyalty I owed. Thus, I thank my fellow Ebthag Idris, who contributed in copying and publishing this book, and I am looking forward to spreading for this book, which contains 400 pages of artistic works that were chosen according to the criterions of success. I never stop as I get numerous ideas which aimed at developing the plastic art. Consequently, I won the Arab Land Prize in Plastic Art, Rust Prize, in 2003 when I participated in a significant book of 300 pages that talked about the artistic work in general and the Arab artists from Egypt, Syria, Sudan, Lebanon, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and all of the plastic phantasms with its legends and stories. So it presented great appreciation to the Arab creators. I must mention that I cooperated with many newspapers such as Global Fellowship, Al Jazeera, Al Medina, Al Khartoum, in Sudan, along with other Syrian and Lebanese newspapers. All the praises be to Allah. I am very satisfied of criticism trial as it formed my critic sense and added to my career as a researcher and historian of the plastic art.
وكممارس وكباحث وكمؤرخ لواقع الحركة التشكيلية العربية ككل. جاءت تجربتي كممارسة ميدانية من خلال مشاركاتي في المعارض التشكيلية ككل ومشاركاتي في عدد من
My experience was results from the active practice to the participation in the plastic galleries, criticism symposiums, and the activities which introduced me well to the other. Whereas my start in these galleries was from my region and moved to a number of cities in Syria such as Damascus and Halab. Then my practical experience was enlarged by internal reaction through the participation in Lebanon, Paris, and Rome to Jeddah and more than Arab capital. Throughout these travels, I used to have my tools such as colors and pens, along with sufferings and sorrows, which can help me well in introducing my portrait that must completely be representative of the history of my life, my land, my ideas, and my ambitions. I can't assure that I've reached because it means my end, so I discovered that it is better to adore and breathe the area where I inhabited, to be able to create my works through dialogue and friendship with the others and the beautiful nature in every station and city I have ever visited. I was engaged with utilizing the charms of any zone I have ever seen by the paintbrush and colors away from the tourist scene. Therefore, I was always melting with this beauty to find positions for my portrait. However, these stations weren't continuously easy and beautiful. They sometimes were frustrating. I used to utilize my last faults and search for the development. For example, a lot of newspapers were open towards me and never published my writings, along with numerous private galleries never hosted me. In that time, I always aimed at the cultural centers which never deal through the market strategy, but it aimed at the charming appearance. So, I was very pleased as any human being with this complete life of sorrow and pleasure. The modern human being cause is very sensitive and can't be discussed through any method except the plastic art. There are a group of artists who are considered to be my moral ideals, such as Louis Cayley, Van Gogh, Fatah al-Madres, and Ismail Hosni, in addition to all the artists and people who supported me, such as my mother, who was the base and the secret of my success. I also discovered that the end is never temporal, but it is by destiny and fate from Allah, the Lord of Alamin. Thus, from this program, I thank the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Abdullah ibn Abdulaziz, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on the kind hospitality, in addition to thanks to the cast of this program.
و90 عن 2009 لا في دائما الى الامام ودائما هذا الحيز الاجمل يعني.